This is the Working in Hell podcast with your host, Vinny Blasio. Each episode, Vinny takes you inside the world of New York State corrections, focusing on both corrections officer and law enforcement issues. And now your host, Vinny Blasio.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Vinny Blasio with your Working in Hell podcast. And today we have a special guest who is running for the New York State 56th Senate District, Jim VanBrederode. Did I say that right?
You did. Home run.
All right. And so we want to welcome Jim. Good afternoon, Jim.
Thanks for having me on here. And a little chilly this morning up here in western New York. I don't know what the temperature is where you are, but it was 40 degrees this morning.
That's a little brisk. The leaves are changing, and up at least here in Florida, it is right now. I'm at 82.
Wow, very good.
But obviously, just from speaking while we were off the air, it's one of the things that actually, I was a lifelong resident of New York State, worked for New York State, and retired 4 years ago and left with New York because I decided that the politics I voted with my feet. So it kind of brings us to the theme. For those that do not know, Jim is running against Senator Cooney for the 56th district. Obviously, if you're in law enforcement, I'll let Jim explain his background and how he got to where he is today. So go ahead, Jim. You have the floor.
Thank you. So the 56th district up here in Rochester, that would be the whole town of Gates, Greece, Brighton, Henrietta, and everything on the west side of the city, everything west of the Genesee River, from Genesee Valley Park all the way down to Charlotte Beach. But I'm 61 years old. I just retired 2 years ago. I was the chief of police in the town of Gates. It's a suburb with about 30,000 residents, and I had a police force of about 35 officers. I spent a total of 37 years in law enforcement. My brother-in-law was a corrections officer with New York State Department of Corrections, and he just retired about 2 years ago. So I have a little bit of experience here. And when I retired, the criminal justice reforms up here in New York were in full swing, and just everything that we had worked for in my career for 37 years as a chief, building relationships in the community, building trust in the community, and keeping the community safe, and making sure we caught the bad guys that did the real bad things. Everything's been turned upside down. They have completely decimated the criminal justice system, literally from A to Z, as we know, from juvenile reform to less is more, to the bail reform, district attorney's office, and even they've even reached into our prisons through the HALT Act. They literally have touched every part of the criminal justice system, and it has not been good. It's been pro-criminal comes first. And so what you're seeing out here on our streets and our communities is the result of these failed democratic policies, these soft on crimes, mass incarceration, equity. We've heard every one of these reasons why they're doing this. So I decided in 2022, at that time, Mr. Cooney was up for his first reelection. I ran against him back then. We did not have this public financing. And financing is obviously a big part of the campaign. And be able to get your message out through TV, social media. You got to have some money to do that. But anyway, in the first reelection, I got 46% of the votes. He got about 52%. And at that time, we didn't have a lot of the issues that were going on right now. Basically, the issue back then was we were literally on a homicide rate that shattered every record. But you know what, though? Those murders didn't really resonate with a lot of the voters because most of those murders were down in the actual city, in the urban areas. The average suburban person, didn't really affect their life. But now we're sitting here 2 years later, and what's changed? Well, we now have the open borders. We now have inflation, gasoline, and we have crime that has just gone totally out of whack here between the retail theft, the violence that's on our streets, the repeat offenders, the parolees that are actually murdering people. And of course, they just voted in April to close, 5 more prisons across New York State, putting us at about 29, 30 prisons. 36 cop killers have been released in the past 4 years. people are being granted parole, whether you killed one person or 3 people, you're getting on a parole. That's their agenda, is to empty the prisons. As you guys know, you know more than I do, but it's all about get everybody back out and get them out of here, put them back in the community, and then this is what we get, right? We are living it every day. We see it every day. And what's astounding, and again, I was a policeman for 37 years, is how much violent crime. It's no longer the night shift, right? When I was a young cop, you couldn't wait to work midnights. That's when all the action was going to be. The sad part is the day shift is right just as many shooting reports and murders as the midnight shift is. There is absolutely, as we know, there is absolutely no respect out there for law enforcement. There's no respect for any authority, and the brazenness of these crimes. This is what they have created, and then it carries over right into their prisons when they get sentenced. Hey, look, there's nothing you can do to me, guys. You're not going to put me back in the box. I can do whatever I want. And then we see all the assaults that are taking place on our corrections officers. I don't know how those guys do that job. I always respected those guys. When I would arrest a bad guy and he'd be spitting and being mean and nasty, once I got to the jail and turned him over, I'd get back to my car and just say, whew, thank God he's off my plate. And then you guys have to deal with it inside the jails, and to have no tools left to have that hammer over their head to do something. If they're going to do something stupid in jail, you guys had some sort of a recourse, but it is a complete mess. And so that's why I am here. I'm coming out of retirement again to try it. And then what else is different this time is I think the Democrats, they implemented this public financing of campaigns. And really the goal of that was for people like me who have no wealth, have no big backers, give me an opportunity to run for office. They want to see more people run for office. It
Right.
really does level the playing field. For every dollar a citizen gave me, New York State gave me $12 in return. So I am sitting here with a great campaign going. I've had TV commercials going since September, radio ads, all stuff that I didn't have 2 years ago. And I got to tell you, my opponent and then the whole Democratic Party is running scared right now. The governor has been to Rochester more times than ever, handing out money, talking about crimes down. And it's a fun election, but again, we got to get our people out to vote.
Just seems that every time that she goes to Rochester, that there is a new murder that night. The 3 issues though that I saw on, and I just want to show that for everybody while we have you here, because I thought that was a excellent a flyer. There's 2 things with your information on your campaign that I like. Send a cop to Albany. I thought that was a very, very good catch line. And for those that are on the audio podcast only and can't see the different screens showing it, we can also find this on the website. And he has his own website, which is JIMVANBE or B. Let me say that again: JIMVANBREDERODE.com. There we go. Took me a little minute to get that out. So these flyers and what have you can be found on Jim's website. And the top 3 things that caught my eye immediately were when you talked about the crime. Obviously, you mentioned that, the bail reform, and then raise the age of 2017. A lot of people forget about that, coupled with also, like you just mentioned, with the HALT Act. What prompted you to put that on as part of your campaign? Obviously, I know that you were police chief and you saw a lot of these issues firsthand, but was there a certain, besides the rate of crime, were there certain statistics that you were seeing that led you to believe that something's got to change?
Well, I tell you, I was the police chief for 9 years. Around 2013 was when my term started, and I went to 2022. And unfortunately, that is when all the criminal justice reforms were in effect. In my town, my little town, where maybe we would have a murder like every 3 or 4 years, I literally spent the last 9 years of my career. My town was the poster child. I had a mass shooting back in 2017, 2018. 7 people shot in a bar, 1 fatally by a parolee who had been arrested the week before for an assault third. And you see, less is more was coming, right? And the parole department had been told, hey, another year, this law is going to be in effect. stop violating these people, because that is going to be the new norm. And so, a lot of these policies started years before, because they all knew it was coming. And that parolee should never have been out of jail. It's 1:00 in the morning. His curfew's violated. He has an illegal handgun. He's in a bar. He violated every condition of his parole. And I had this mass shooting in my town. And boy, I can't tell you how pissed I was. I got on TV and said, this is an absolute disgrace what just happened. This was preventable. And look at the trauma that was just inflicted on so many people. And one family lost their loved one. And then I had, Raise the Age came. And I was also the president of all the chiefs up here. So I was kind of like the spokesperson. And we held press conferences when these laws were coming. We held a press conference on this Raise the Age. Look at nobody was against, maybe raising the age to 18, but you had to give us some sort of resources in exchange. What are we going to do with these kids, right? Other than you take them in the back of your police car and you literally just drive them home and you put them right back into that same crappy environment that got them in trouble the first time. So going back to Raise the Age, it's 11 a.m. on an April, beautiful sunny morning in the spring, 11 a.m. on a street that takes you right to the Rochester International Airport. These two 15-year-olds in a stolen car. They've been out carjacking people for the last 3 weeks, totally off the radar, haven't been going to school. The criminal justice system had no idea where these kids were. They all had warrants. They go and they block in the 72-year-old guy. They want to steal his car. They block him in. They jump out. He puts his window up, locks the doors. They shoot right through the window, and they kill him right then and there. And then they take off and just leave him there. And again, I was just, see what you got. This is what we just did, people. This poor guy at 72 years old just lost his life because we have a criminal justice system that has been totally dismantled. And then I had another parolee, right? Cut the ankle bracelet off, gone, and they wouldn't go look for him until he actually missed his his actual next appointment with his parole officer. Well, we can't look for him until even though he cut the ankle bracelet. The whole system's a mess. Anyway, he ends up stabbing one of my officers. My officer has to shoot him. It just went on and on. The major crime in my little small community, which really put us on the map, and it was all because of these darn criminal justice policies that should never have been in place. We argued for them, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Once they got the supermajority down in Albany, they didn't want to listen. They didn't want to talk. They have the Democratic Party has an agenda: mass incarceration, equity. We have too many. The numbers don't balance right if you don't have a certain racial component here. We all know what they're talking about, and so they pass these policies, and now we're sitting here living it. And so, that motivates me every day. I think of those poor victims. I think of those families. See, this is the thing legislators don't see, right? You and I, cops, were on the job. You were there. You held the hand of some family member. You had to go make that death notify. You see the screaming moms and the crying moms, and it just, it sticks with you, and it makes you want to get in the fight and represent those families, because nobody's speaking for them. And these lawmakers don't give two craps about crime victims. And it is absolutely disgusting what's going on out there.
I think today, more so than years past, as you just discussed, I think there's more of an awareness now because more people are being affected, and it's in front of you. Before it was like out of sight, out of mind, and now it's directly in your face. So I think there's a little more notoriety, so to speak, than there ever has been. The other part that you touched on is that these laws that have been created are actually hurting those that they're trying to, or so-called trying to help. And that message seems to be getting lost as these crazy laws, if you just gave example after example, and even I'm sitting here still shocked at what you just described, but they're actually hurting the people that they're trying to help the most. And I just can't get my head around that.
No, and look at that. I was just on our local black radio station, and I said, no, the policies, the Democratic policies have done nothing but hurt the black communities the most. The poor neighborhoods that they all claim they're trying to help, they're the ones that are paying the price the most with the stolen cars zipping up and down the streets, driving down sidewalks, the shootings every night, houses getting shot up. But, you're right, this retail theft, and you got to remember here in Monroe County, in the past 2 years, where just under 6,000 cars have been stolen in 2 years. That is like unheard of. 6,000 residents have had their cars stolen. And they're not out just joyriding them and leaving them on a side street. They're destroying the cars. They're intentionally wrecking them. They're intentionally spray painting the inside. Kia boys, thousands and thousands of dollars, insurance claims, inflation. But this is what's in play now. So people see this. You go to your favorite box store, right? And there's blue light cameras now in the parking lot. They got concrete barriers in front of the store so you can't drive the car through. There's somebody at the front door, maybe a security guard. You go to get, deodorant, and it's locked up because of all the product that's being stolen. That this is the new retail America that we live in. This is the new business plan under the Democratic Party on how you have to run a business, because there's so much retail theft and stores don't even call. The police can't do nothing. We come, we give you an appearance ticket, and then they just go back out and do another theft. But this is what's gonna. Hopefully, I'm hoping this is gonna finally motivate the voters to say, you know what, enough's enough. We have got to restore a two-party system, and it's time to send a cop to Albany.
I do love that tagline. I thought that was very effective. So I don't know if that's your trademark, but I thought that was very effective, and I couldn't agree more with that. The HALT Act, just to touch on that for a second, your opponent was proud in 2018, and obviously I'm going to speak from his direct quote, where Senator Cooney at the time, and the vote for that passage of the HALT Act was 42-21. And then obviously Governor Cuomo at the time signed that law into it March 31st. But Cooney said, and I quote, "Today we move close to ending a tortuous and inhumane practice on incarcerated people in New York. Solitary confinement is ineffective and has no purpose in our restorative justice system. I stand with the hashtag Halt Solitary campaign, and I proudly voted to pass this landmark legislation by my colleague, Senator Salazar." And I mean, to me, that was disgusting. And I know that he's been to facilities recently with Senator Salazar, but the premise was at that time, and these are my opinions, I don't know if you share them or not, but the thing with the HALT Act that surprised me with Senator Cooney was that everyone was told, just like you said with your other policies that you disagreed with, certain things were going to happen because of it. And there was no reason for this to be codified into law. It could have been easily a trial policy. It could have been easily adopted by docs or part of the governor himself if he wanted, so to speak. And then it could always be reversed, because as you know, that once something becomes law, it's much harder to repeal and take away. And the numbers, you spoke on it earlier, the numbers are through the roof. The numbers of inmate violence has broken a new all-time record for the New York State correctional system. The inmate on officer or staff, all staff, not just officers, I should say, is almost near what it was all of last year, and we still have over 2 months to go. So, I mean, the very people that this law was trying to protect is actually having the opposite consequence. But more importantly, is now that it's a law, it's going to take, hopefully, people like you that will get elected and be able to voice some opposition to this and have it repealed. But it should never have been there to begin with.
No, but you got to understand the Democratic Party in New York. It is an activism agenda. This is not a Democratic Party that you and I would have thought of 20 years ago. There is a specific agenda out there, this restorative, and again, this whole idea of equity in the prisons, and it doesn't matter what reality is. They have a specific agenda. They're out to accomplish that. You got people like my opponent. He's now 42 years. He went to law school, came out of law school, and right in the government. Has no idea anything about what it's like to be a police officer or have to work inside that prison. And then they make these feel good laws, and they take their victory laps and pat each other on the back. But I give you an example of how repulsive this is. So Mother's Day. 5-6 months ago, we had Mother's Day. My opponent chose to hold a press conference with these mothers whose adult convicted felon children are sitting in our state prison, and giving them hope, how they miss their kids, and someday we're going to get them all out of prison. That's my opponent. I would have stood with the mothers of homicide victims, the mothers who are experiencing their first Mother's Day and their children are now dead. He chose to stand with the mothers whose kids are in New York State prisons right now. It is so disgusting. Everything is backwards, upside down. And I got to tell you, if this election goes blue, I don't know what to say. I just don't know what more to say about the voters in New York. If this goes blue, we are in big trouble. And you know what? More people are going to vote just like you did with their feet and get the heck out of Dodge, because they're coming after, there's so many other topics that they're coming after. Second Amendment. They've made such crazy laws. 250 gun shops across our state have closed in the last 6-7 months. It's hard. You can't even get a gun permit now because it's costing you so much money and so much training. You can't even buy bullets now without them doing a background check. And, they're making it so hard that they want nobody to apply for the pistol permits,
Right.
And it's working because the applications are way, way, way down. They're coming after, how you're going to heat your home, right? They want to outlaw gas furnaces, what appliances you buy. No more gas appliances. Everything's got to go electric. You are losing all your rights up here in New York. And I tell you what, people are, I got to push back, and they are. They're 100,000 a year are leaving New York. They're getting the heck out of here. I mean, how can you stay here?
Well, it's certainly what I did, because I didn't think, from being in the town of Hamburg where I left, was that I could no longer effectuate the change at the voting booth. So right. I took upon myself to say that, all right, that I'm going to go somewhere else that supports my values and where I feel I'm more welcomed with a lot of the things that you just said. I've here in Florida, obviously our laws are vastly district of that in New York. But more importantly, I have friends, family that I love dearly that are in New York. And so for them, I keep active and I try to help them. And I know that they're echoing the same exact sentiments that you're saying are what they're saying to me. And they don't have the luxury. My father's sick. He's 82 years old. He doesn't have the luxury of picking up and coming living with his son in Florida. So I get that. And he doesn't want to leave at 82. I understand that. And he shouldn't have to, but that's may end up what it's going to have to take. But I just hope there's enough people with common sense that just say, if enough people voted and got out the vote, I do believe there's enough like-minded people that are in agreement with a lot of the topics and a lot of the things that you just said, that if they showed up to the voting booth, that it could effectuate the change that is desperately needed.
Yeah, you know what else is interesting? So you're down in Florida now, okay? You have 2 million more people than we do up here in New York. Our budget is $237 billion. You guys in Florida are half of what you're $172 billion budget, right? It just shows you a Republican state versus a Democratic state. Come to New York, they want to give you so many programs and so much. They want you to be dependent on the government up here. And so this last budget cycle, right? Okay. We're in tough economic times. Florida reduced their tax rate, reduced the budget. Up here in New York, because it's the Democrats, they increased spending by another $8 billion, going totally against what all of the other common sense, reasonable governments would do under these tough economic times. That New York is just drunk on power, and you have a one-party rule, and this is life under the Democratic Party up here. And like you said, I tell you what, if we don't take back one of these, the Senate or something up here with this election in about 12 more days, boy, I don't know. I think New York is done. I don't know how else you're going to be able to win. Things couldn't be more bad up here. But yeah, we have got to get our neighbors, our friends out. And what's sad is most voters in New York now, they don't want to belong to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. There's actually more independents registered now up here than there are Republicans. So people don't want to be loyal to either party. They're not happy, I think, with either party. But if you want the same old, then vote the same this year, and you'll get 4 more years of the same stuff that's coming. You know what's sad up here in New York? They left a lot of laws on the table in April because it's an election year, right?
Right.
But things that are coming down the pike is the elder parole, right? 55
Right.
and older. It's sitting there. They didn't sign it right now, but it's coming. The legalization of prostitution, the legalization of assisted suicide. The Democratic Party has become the party of no moral compass. And these are all laws that are coming in the next 2 years. If you vote these guys back in, stand by, because some more radical stuff is coming, and there will be a lot more after that. They have complete and total control. They don't need anybody. They can pass anything they want. And really, our state is run by the three people, right? You have the governor, Carl Heastie's there, and Andrea Stewart Cousins. The three of them pretty much run the whole state. And that's what we have. That's what the people voted for.
Yeah, unfortunately, the 3 men in a room, or now you could say 2 women and a man in a room. But it's sad, but it shouldn't be that way. And people, I think, are frustrated, and they're expressing their frustrations in a lot of different ways. And a lot has, just by looking at the new census of New York, they're just saying, I've had enough. You can replace them with illegals, you can do what you have, but a lot of people that were paying taxes, including myself, have decided that, enough is enough, and have left. And it's sad, because New York doesn't have to be that way, and it hasn't always been that way. We've had disagreements, obviously, but it was never as bad as what I'm seeing the last couple of years. I just can't believe the direction that it's heading. But to get into one last thing, there's a lot of correction members that are within your district. There's a lot of facilities that are not necessarily directly in the facility themselves, but there's a lot of people that live in the district and go to the various facilities that are out there. So if you had a message that you could say to them specifically, I know that you spoke earlier of everyone in your district, but if you had a message directly to them, what would that message be?
Look, I as a candidate, I've heard your SOS messages, your call. I've met with many of your members. I've had the privilege of meeting officers that have been injured. I've seen incredible videotapes of what's going on. I've heard the message, but it's all about getting us in office and getting us over the goal line. Help is on the way, but we got to get these men and women like myself elected. But the message is loud and clear. What's going on with our corrections officer? And again, my brother-in-law retired, and it was sad to see he couldn't wait for his last day, and that's not a good way to end your career.
No.
To sit there and literally count the hours till you retire. That wasn't the way it was when I was a policeman. I loved my job every day, but I couldn't imagine working in such a toxic environment, such a dangerous environment, that you literally are counting the years and the months to get out of there. And I couldn't imagine the stress on your family, your wife and kids at home, knowing, if you're in state prison, these are the bad of the bads. And they can do anything to you at any moment. It is an incredible, stressful job. We have got to restore law and order back in the prisons, and to give the corrections officers the ability to put the bad guys, put them in solitary confinement, and there's got to be a punishment for their behavior. And but your message is clear. We've heard it. We've seen it. I've met your members. Now it's just a matter of trying to get us over the goal line and into office, so we can try to correct some of these horrific laws that have been put in place.
Yeah, and thank you. And I wanted to thank the men and women of corrections, because the direct correlation with the HALT bill, not only have we seen the rate of violence increase, which that was predicted, but we didn't predict what was going to happen with the recruitment. And because of the assaults that are happening and the mandates that are happening to these men and women officers, they're no longer to have a home life. Their regular days off have been stripped from them. They're working 16 to 24 hours. Their working conditions are, and some I would argue, that are worse than the inmates that they're supervising. And that is no way to live. Like you said, I retired early. That was too young, in my opinion, to retire. But because the changes were forthcoming and I saw the way the department was heading, and no way did I have to work what's going on today. So I just don't know. I hear it in their voice, their frustration, but the conditions, even outside the assaults of just getting mandated and having to work nonstop, and you're living to work, not working to live, and nobody should have to be that. I don't care what occupation or profession that you're in, nobody should have to do that. And to have a state do that to its own employees, I find despicable.
And it's across all the different public safety sectors right now, from 911 dispatchers, police departments. They have totally destroyed the criminal justice system. 2020 was the biggest beatdown on the criminal justice system, and it's going to take decades to recover from that. Every politician jumped on the bandwagon, threw us under the bus, ran us over forward, backwards. We know what happened back in 2020. And now a lot of those same ones that are in office now, we back the blue, here's more money. Now that they've created this huge crap show out there, they're handing out money left and right, and look how great we are. But don't get fooled. Voters shouldn't get fooled by all this. Remember who was in charge when all this happened in 2020? Well, those be in my head. What happened that year? The rioting that took place up here in Rochester, and what we saw and what we had to endure. It's across every segment of the criminal justice world, trying to find people to fill these jobs. It's crazy. But you're right. It's not a good lifestyle. It's very stressful. It's tough on the families. Suicide rates are up for police and corrections officers. It's not a healthy environment. It's a very toxic environment to have to work in right now. And it shows in the recruitment. When I came on the job in 1985, there were thousands of us that took that test. You couldn't wait. You had to compete. It was hard to get on. I mean, they only took the most cleanest background checks, and you had to be the best of the best to get on. And now you're lucky you get 100 people to show up to take an exam. But this is what they created, and there's no one to blame but the politicians that were in charge when they had a choice to make. Side with the activists or side with common sense and law and order.
It makes no sense. And as you said earlier, I'll leave it at that, because I think you hit a really good point, is who's speaking for the victims.
Yeah, and in the meantime, right, the poor citizens are paying the price for all these carjackings and the fatal encounters that are taking place. There's nobody out there speaking for them, and that is so disgusting that nothing's happening. And we haven't even touched upon the opioid epidemic that's going on out there, and how that's ravaged our communities, and hundreds of people have died from that fentanyl. What a mess. We are living in a complete mess right now. And the flag's upside down, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and it's getting worse. And I'll put up your flyer one more time for the those that are on the audio version of the podcast, and if you are or the video version of the podcast, and if you're on the audio, this link will be sent with the podcast, so you'll be able to go directly to Jim's website, and you can gain more information. If you want to donate, to volunteer, to help Jim, we would certainly encourage you to do so. And Jim, I will just, before we close, I'll let you have the floor for the last words that you'd like to send and give to everyone.
So look, I just want to remind everybody, how easy this early voting. Most of us who grew up, we vote on election day, but things have changed. We have got to adapt with the change. That this whole early voting, it started 4 or 5 years ago, and you have 10 days. You can go out there and vote, and it's going to start on Saturday. You don't have to know what voting poll. You can go to any building where it says voting inside. I don't care what town you're in. You can pull in there, give them your name. They will figure out what your ballot is, and you can vote right then and there. You don't have to know where you got to go. Go into any one of these. Don't get caught up waiting for election day. It's Murphy's Law. You have a dead battery that day. The weather's going to be crappy. Something goes on. There's a big line. For me, I hate lines, But this early voting, we have got to take advantage of it. It literally starts Saturday. You can vote on a Sunday. You can vote Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, any day of the week. It's convenient. You get in and out. And again, you don't even have to know where to go. Just show up to any of these locations where it says vote here. You're good to go. I can't emphasize how important that is. We have got to make sure everybody gets out. My mother's 89 years old. I got to make sure I get her there. My kids, I got 2 kids in their 20s. I got to make sure they get out and vote. This is what we have to do if we want to change the conditions that we're working in right now as corrections officers and law enforcement officers.
I agree. You're right. There's 11 days left, so I think that nailed it right on the head. The early voting begins Saturday, right? Saturday
up here, yeah.
So take advantage of that. And I think that if we get enough people that are out and actually participate in the vote, and whether it's early voting or that on election day, I always think that taking advantage of it now as the early voting is the way to go. So you're not leaving anything to chance is a great idea. Very, very good to I'd rather have it early than not at all.
Yep. Just get it done. It's over with. And, you don't have to worry about making sure you get there. And again, there's nothing worse when you pull in somewhere and here's this huge line, right? It just turns you off. It's like being stuck in traffic. Nobody likes to be stuck in traffic. But you can avoid all that. Just go on out. And if you see one of those signs, just pull in and get it over with. You don't even have to show ID.
That is true. Here in Florida, we do. We have to give a license. It's scanned. It took me a minute to get used to, but in New York, no, they never ask for ID.
Nope, it's crazy. We're a sanctuary state, man. Sanctuary state.
That is true, unfortunately, but true.
Who thought, right?
Never in my lifetime, but here we are. All right, Jim, I just want to thank you for spending the last hour with us. So I want to appreciate you coming on the show, giving your feedback and your background. And obviously you have the show's full support. We endorse you and support you and wish you much success in becoming the new New York State Senator for the 56th District.
And thank you for reaching out to me. This is a nice new relationship, but just keep the hope, man. There's help coming. Keep the hope. Things are going to change. We'll get over this one way or another. We will navigate this massive bump in the road, but things will be okay.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Working in Hell podcast with Vinny Blasio. Find this podcast on any of your favorite platforms like Audible, iHeart, and Spotify. And be sure to check out www.workinginhell.com for more information and important links. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.